Hello. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Depends where you are from. My name is Alex for shorten, or full name would be Alexeis, and I'm from OpenNebula. And today we're going through a very interesting topic, the introduction to OpenNebula operations. Please drop something in the chat, like exclamation mark or any random number, or just say hi there if I am perfectly audible. Hey, hi. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me know. Right. So, all in all, the gate will be the following. So, we go a little bit on the slide deck, then we look at the obviously actual deployment of OpenNebula. You can follow along. This session is being recorded, so you can actually rewind back and then look at it and follow along the recording instead of the live one. Any questions regarding the topic are welcome in the comments. So feel free to drop your questions in the comment section. Either myself or my colleague will pick this up and will answer that. Cool. Welcome once again. And let's begin. Let's look at our agenda for today. So what we're going to discuss is Sunstone, right? So what is Sunstone, how to access it, what are some interesting things about the Sunstone, and how to make it yours. Then some generic settings of a user, that's quite important, especially if you are managing things. Virtual networks, we are going to discuss and touch on virtual networks, how to configure them, some perks, bells and whistles of the virtual network. I will also tell you what's the marketplace and what are the apps, what actually hides behind that meaning. We will discuss virtual machine templates and also look at them. And we will end up with deploying a virtual machine. And then obviously access the virtual machine using the VNC. And let's see how it goes time-wise. Maybe I'll be able to show anything else, but that really depends on the time. Right. So buckle up yourself and enjoy the flight. Now let's talk about the Sunstone. So what the Sunstone is, that's the web graphical user interface, as easy as that. If you install things from using the mini one, or you've installed from packages, then most likely your Sunstone is listening on port 2616, right? That's how you can access it. Plus, we have actually two Sunstones, right? We have the new one and we have the older one. The new one is more polished, more shiny. It's to some extent easier to use, and it's more intuitive. But the old one is also there, and even though it's deprecated, you still can find it there. So if you are used to using the old Sunstone, you have time to transition to a newer one. Then what else is good about the Sunstone? It has a built-in MFA with a one-time password or one-time code, and it's easy to enable in the settings of your user. And it's a cool thing that it's the same entry point for administrators, for cloud users, for, let's say, the middle manager, the one who can control groups, and so they will have the same entry point, so you don't have multiple admin and user panels. Though it's quite important to mention that it has different views, and depends on your settings, the different view will be available. Now, the Sunstone looks like this. It can go to one provision. If you know what it is, that's the easy way how to provision the bare metal clusters, let's say in AWS or Equinix. but your main Sunstone is right here and asks you for the user and for the password. Now, when it comes to user, then by default, the default username for the top tier administrator is one admin. So, and then enter your super secret password. Now, what you need to know about one admin is it's the unstoppable user, right? So it belongs to the one admin user group, and it's practically the almighty here. So if you are going to add anyone to that group, make sure you can trust that person because it's unstoppable. You cannot limit it with any access rules, with anything. So it's very important to trust the person who is one admin. Now, when you log in, you instantly welcomed with a dashboard, and then there is a menu that on the left. Now you can pin it, and I'm going to pin it uh, just to make it a little bit more convenient. Now, um, another quite important thing here is the view selector. So you have the view selector, and so it goes from cloud to admin, and every view limits the access, softly limits. That's quite important. It softly limits the access to some specific parts of the OpenNebula. It makes the view or the overall setting much more simplified. Now, if I will expand a lot of tabs, and I'll go there and jump into the cloud view, you can see that it actually reduced by 80%. So if someone is just simply using OpenNebula and not going to go into administrative tasks or anything other than just deploying virtual machines, that's what is enough for that person. So you can assign only cloud view. Now then we go to users view, and it expands the accessibility of the front end. Then you go to group admin, and then you end up with the admin view. Now, why I said it's a soft limiter, because the actual permissions are calculated based on your group belonging and what is configured there. So even if I'm looking myself, or I will do some magic and I will only leave to myself the cloud view, I'll not be able to access users, the global user administration from here, because that's what the cloud users are typically limited to, only their own stuff. But using the command line, I still can manage everything. So it's just yet another way how to remove the distracting things from the web UI, but the actual usage depends on your rights. Right. So then you have your settings. So that is the user settings, where user can pick the color schema. So it goes from system to dark to light. For demo purposes, I'm picking the light one. But if you go with system, then it takes whatever your system is configured to. Now again, excuse me, clicked a little bit in the wrong direction. So I'm going to pick light one, so it's a lot easier to see. Now, there are also the default view, the one that I would like to have by default when I log in, and so on. Plus, there is the important thing for every user. That is the secure shell public key. So if you will enroll your public key right here, then you will be able to access your virtual machines using the secure shell connection, using that private key. Right, so the public key on the virtual machine side will be able to authenticate you without prompting for any password. Now that is quite important. I have one enrolled here because when you install Mini One, it automatically configures the right user key in the configuration. But if you create a blank user, then blank user will be missing that part. So need to go and enroll. And obviously the two-factor authentication. So that's where you can register your authentication app, be it Google's, be it something like Bitwarden or Microsoft's, whatever you're using, that can be registered right over there. Now, that is the important part of the OpenNebula, right? So what else you can go from here? You can go to any other, and as the admin, you can go to system configurations and configure users and groups. You can see your infrastructure. Again, as the admin, you can list all your hosts, list all your clusters. You can access all your network templates, and you also get the access to storage, to templates, to instances, and so on and so forth. Right. So again, it's very important to be aware what is your view and what's configured for permissioning. Now, when it comes to virtual networks, OpenNebula supports a multitude of standards, and that would be Bridge, that would be Open vSwitch or Open vSwitch with VXLAN, the VXLAN itself, and the .1Q. So these are the industry standards that you can configure as your virtual network, because, well, of course, your virtual machines somehow need to communicate with your network. Now, here's the list of all your virtual networks. And what you also can find under the networks is virtual networks and network templates, as well as security groups. Now, network templates is a quite nifty feature that allows you to predefine some of the network aspects, like the type of the network, address space, some, let's say, DNS, gateway, and that kind of stuff. And then your users, instead of creating the networks themselves, will be able just to create the network from the template. And that makes their life easier because they don't need to think about a lot of the configuration. That's the first thing. Secondly, that also makes you in charge of how the network is configured. So that is, again, quite a good thing to have. Now, then you have your simple networks that you can create yourself, and so by just clicking the plus, and it navigates you to the network creation already. But if you have any network, and again, if you installed from Mini1 with KVM hypervisor, then you have the VNet, and VNet is marked with this, let's say, tag or label FW. So that actually shows the type of this network. See, the reason here is because we have bridge or bridge with security groups. Now, security groups is the way how you can filter out the traffic before this traffic reaches the virtual machine. So you don't need to actually configure any firewall inside your VM. You can control traffic using security groups. So if you'd like to proceed with that, you need to enable to create a network with FW or bridge with security groups. Because, well, if you go if you proceed with a simple bridge, then that would be the one that allows basically any. Now, here we go. You create the network and place the configuration you wish. Now, it's important to name it somehow. For example, my VNet, so my virtual network, and then pick up the cluster. So you can have multiple clusters, and resources can belong to a specific cluster. But by default, you have the default cluster where all your resources are going to be attached if you don't set it up in any other way. And as I said, by default, the default cluster is there. So let's pick up the default cluster. Now, there's a bit more. You may use this network only for private networking and not bounded to any physical device, or you can actually name the physical device where this bridge is going to be bound to. Plus, you may create a custom name for the bridge, or it is going to have the standard unified name mentioning one. So again, the way you wish, you can do it like that. If you switch the use only private host networking, then it is going to remove the field of the uh, physical network interface. So once you configure that, because again, pretty much it depends on your network layout and depends what kind of setup of your data center you're using. But if we proceed to the next step, that's where things become quite interesting. So first thing, you have the address space, right? So you can define the range of IP addresses that are going to be attached to your virtual machines. And you can go from IPv4 to IPv4 and v6, or just simply v6, or just pick the Ethernet and not configure anything else. Now, with the IP address, you need to pick up the first IP address and then the size of this network, of this range, and that would be, let's say, 150. So then you also can define the MAC address space, and basically, if you are not going to define anything here, then we have some default settings, and then it is going to take the default settings from the configuration file. Then you go to Security tab. Security tab is where you pick your security groups. In my case, I don't need to pick any because that is simple bridge. It is without any network filtering. Plus, there is always a default group, and the default security group again allows anything to go in. Quality of service, if you need to define any quality of service, then feel free to do it right here. And then the context. So context is a very interesting thing. That's where you can define your gateway, your DNS, the network address space, basically also the mask. By default, that would be the mask 24. So basically, you will have 254 IP addresses. That's typical Class C network. But again, you can alter all these settings if you really need to. Now, as you can see, the difference already here is the firewall mentioned here, FW, and the bridge mentioned here. That's because, again, I configured that without any security group support. Now, to make my demonstration successful, I need to change the DNS settings, because otherwise the firewall is not going to like the requests from this DNS server. And in most of the cases, if you have any security device in front of you, or probably even sometimes when you run things in cloud, you also need to add specific IP addresses to be allowed to run as a DNS server. So again, I don't want to do any of that. So to me, that would be just as simple as set another DNS. And you can do it. Just select the virtual network, go to update. Then from the update, go to advanced options. And under the context, you see DNS is 172.16.101. I'm going just to set something like 8888 because I know that this one is going to work. And click finish. So again, that's just to make sure that the network resolution actually works. Another thing about networking, which is an interesting feature, it would be a reservation. So what you can do, you can reserve a portion, a fraction of your network, and then give your user access to use that reservation instead of giving them access to the actual virtual network that you've created. That again is something you can do to place a limit of the IP addresses that they can use. So instead, just give a hard 10 and that's it. They're not going to allocate anymore. Or again, just for security reasons, so they can manage this network and never touch your original one. Now, the reservation is done very easy. You just need to pick up the network you would like to have, click reserve, select the number of addresses you would like to reserve. So let's say 15. So point out the first address in the reservation. If you are not going to point anything here, then it's going to take the first one that's free. And then the IP range, the network that you would like to take this 15 IP addresses from. And then, for example, we can name it as new reservation. And that's how we are going to reserve the 15 IP addresses. So here it is, right? What the reservation does, it inherits all the settings from its parent, right? So as you can see, the type is FW. And if we will look at some attributes, you can see that the DNS name is whatever I configured there, and the gateway as well. Then the bridge type, the bridge name, and so on. So it's going to inherit all the settings from its parent, which makes it again a very useful feature. On the parent side, these reservations can be seen under the leases, so they will be marked as the reserved. On the leases tab, what else you can do? You can reserve some specific IP address and make sure that this IP address is not going to get picked up by any of the virtual machine. That is, again, very helpful if you need this IP address to be reserved for something else. Now, if you will, again, you will not be able to occupy it with a machine, but you also will not be able to use it in the reservations because that is marked as occupied, and the occupied one cannot be used with your network reservations. Again, quite useful if you need to block a specific IP address from the range. Now, let's say I try to hold IP address that is not in the range. If I try to do this, I'm getting an error because again, it's not the part of the range, so I'm not able to hold that IP address, which is pretty much logical. And it's good that we have this safety feature because you may have a typo, or your keyboard is sticky and you just write an extra 0 or something like that. You put it in a hold, and then you see that virtual machine is taking the IP address that you thought needs to be held by the OpenNebula. So again, that is a safety feature that you can rely on. So that would be your network, and from this view, you can find also the amount of IP addresses that are reserved, and also perform some of the minor reconfiguration. What the use of network if we don't run anything, right? So there must be some kind of a workload in order to utilize all that network that we've configured. And for that, we have virtual machines For that, virtual machines are instantiated from virtual machine templates. Virtual machine templates are based on images. Where to get those images? Virtual machine templates from the marketplace. So marketplace is the source of pre-built images, and the marketplace can be public or can be private. So you can run your own private marketplace if you would like to. For example, your company internal marketplace where you upload your images and then they're not going to spread out to public. But there is a public marketplace that is provided by us, by OpenNebula, and the marketplace is the source of so-called apps. So apps are images, virtual machine templates, or also service templates. We're not going to cover service templates today, but service template is the multi-VM deployment. So when you have some kind of a massive application that requires, let's say, database, requires some kind of a front end, web UI, then it may also require the in-memory cache, then may also require some API and some other stuff. So in order to deploy, scale it, either up or down, and manage it as a single entity, we have services. And then the service templates is something that you are going to rely on when you deploy the services. But all that can be found in the marketplace, the default marketplace. And our marketplace contains ready to use images, which means that from the moment you've downloaded or imported that image, it is ready to use. It doesn't require any additional configuration or installation, nothing, just plug and play. Obviously, it's a generic one, so it must be a little bit fine-tuned. Like, for example, you need to plug in into some specific virtual network in order to have a network access, or you may need to configure some commands that will be executed post-deployment. But all in all, that is the ready to use images from the get-go. And if we go to the storage, we have apps and we have marketplaces. So in marketplaces, that's where you can add more marketplaces, and apps, that is the list of all your applications that you can download. Now, you only need to import that, but you also can download it locally if you wish. And there's a good filter that helps you to locate the actual image you would like to. For example, you can pick the different marketplace, or you can pick either the service template or virtual machine template, or the image readiness. So if it's ready, then you would like to get it. Also, the ownership can be used in filtering, or just do a simple search. It also suitable. For example, let's search for the Ubuntu. Now we have a load of these images, and some of them are bigger. For example, there is the smaller one, there is a minimal deployment, but let's take the Ubuntu 2404 default deployment. Now, in order to import that into the OpenNebula, you need to press this cloud icon. And that is going to guide you through the importing process. So you can find two things here. So the naming that you can place, that you can kind of enter yourself, and also this toggle, which is enabled by default. So what's going to do? It's going to download the virtual machine template along with the image. If there is the virtual machine template that is associated with this image, then it's going to be imported into your data store, which is very, very helpful because we are not deploying our virtual machines from images. We are deploying our virtual machines from the virtual machine templates, because one template can have a multitude of images for different reasons. Because what is image? image is a snapshot of a disk. It may be with the bootable operating system. It may be just something with some data on it, maybe some binaries, scripts, whatever you would like to place there. Or it may be also empty. So yeah, that's what the image is. And then the virtual machine template defines what is the bootable one, where to mount it. Also, the virtual machine, the image is a snapshot of a disk. So how do OpenNebula know which actual resources to use? How many memory, how many CPU, and so on, and so on. So for that, again, the virtual machine template is something that you will need. That's why you need to toggle this button. Then you have name and virtual machine template name. So you can rename the image and you can rename the virtual machine template from here. It's very, very important if you would like to have multiple images, then please note that same data store cannot handle multiple images with the same name. Even though we are using IDs, but again, name is quite crucial here as well. And then you need to import that onto the data store. Now, OpenNebula supports multiple data stores, and also there are different data stores for different reasons. So there is the image data store where you keep your images, and then there is a system data store which keeps the images while they are attached to a virtual machine. So basically the running ones. And then there's also the files data store where you can place your plain text files or basically any file you wish. You can upload to that data store. But when it comes to storing your images, you need to use the image data store. And every cluster must have the system data store and must have the image data store. There are different type of data stores that you can use. They might be network attached. They might be local. In this case, if you're running mini one, the data store is local, which means that the data store for image and for system is located on basically on the host. Every host will have its own independent data store locally. So that is, again, a quite important thing, but you can use shared one if you'd like to. Feel free to have one. The only thing that you need then to create it and mount it correctly, it's not a topic of this demonstration, but there is a documentation that can guide you through that process. And it's not that hard. Yeah, I obviously need to select the data store where I would like to keep my image and click finish. As you can see in the pop-up, the image ID and virtual machine template ID both are imported or marked as in the process of being downloaded. So again, here is the difference. If we go to virtual machine templates, it's already there. If we go to image, you may see that it's not yet ready and it's in the state locked. So that's because while virtual machine template is basically plain text with configurations, the download of that is lightning fast. If we talk about the image, then it takes time to actually download the image and place it into the image data store. So that there's multiple factors, of course, that impacts that. The first one is your network speed, your storage speed, and so on and so forth. So it may take time before you actually can run your virtual machine. So just look at the image. Another thing to be aware of, that some of the virtual machine templates, they're packed with multiple images. So it's not only one image that needs to be downloaded, but there might be multiple images that needs to be downloaded. So again, there might be an image that is 4 gigs. There might be an image that's 25 gigs. Depends on the virtual machine and the parameters and the settings and what this virtual machine is. Is it a simple OS or OS with application? and so on and so forth. So again, it may require a little bit more time. So check your images so they are in the ready state. What else you can find here? The image may be persistent or non-persistent. Your images by default, most of the time, are non-persistent, but you may have a persistent image, and then it means that this image and the progress of that image, right? All the changes that you made with that image during the virtual machine lifecycle are going to be preserved. And you are operating with the actual image instead of a copy. So if I will deploy a virtual machine from Alpine Linux template that runs from this image, then this image is going to be cloned, and this clone will be transferred to a host, and my virtual machine is going to use that clone. As soon as I'm destroying this one, all the changes are going to vanish. Again, which is fine because, well, the VM went through its life cycle and no longer needed. Now, if I'm running the persistent image, then it's going to mean that when I'm will take this image back, it's going to preserve all the changes. And then it also means that only one virtual machine at the same time can claim this image, which is also important. But typically, you're running non-persistent unless you have a use case for the persistent one. For example, you are building your own image, so you would like all your changes to be preserved while you're working on that. So, images, fine. Let's go to virtual machine templates, because as I mentioned before, image is a snapshot of a disk, but you're actually deploying stuff from the virtual machine template. If you are going to clone the virtual machine template, it's not going to clone the image. It's also quite important thing, right? By default, it's just going to clone the virtual machine template, and then two virtual machine templates are going to refer to the same image. If you'd like to clone it with image, press the checkbox here. Otherwise, it's just going to create a copy of this template referencing that the same image. So quite an important thing, right? So what's the virtual machines are? Oh, sorry, virtual machine templates. What's that? Virtual machine template is a reference to a set of images. It may be one image, maybe multiple images, a set of virtual networks, because your virtual machine can run with multiple networks. So that can be defined at the template level. And also some parameters for the upcoming virtual machine. For example, the memory usage, the CPU, also startup script, and that kind of stuff can be defined at the template level. So some of the settings can be adjusted only by the administrator, because virtual machine template is something that your user also going to see, and your user are going to instantiate your they're going to instantiate their virtual machines from the very same template. But then during the deployment, during the instantiation of virtual machine, they will be able to tweak something, but only as there are a few things that they can actually change during the deployment. The rest can be adjusted by the administrator or by the owner of that template, right? And then we touched a little bit on the multi-VM deployments, as we call them, services. So these virtual machine, multi-virtual machine deployments services are going to rely on virtual machine templates. So that's why virtual machine templates are so important when we talk about OpenNebula and virtual machines. Now, let's look at the Alpine Linux, right? So that is the default virtual machine template that you are going to have if you deployed your OpenNebula instance using the mini one. So this one's getting imported automatically. So let's go to update. And here's the thing that you can change already. For example, the memory usage. So set it to 256 instead of 128. And of course, you can change the units from megabytes to gigs. Then the physical CPU, that is something that you can assign. So how much of the CPU it's going to occupy. Now, when you will look at the host, it will be multiplied by 100. So 1 means 100. And in your host, your CPU, available CPU will be multiplied also by 100. So if you have 20 CPUs, you will end up with 2,000 CPUs. So a number will be 2,000. Now that's where you can also give some more resources if you wish. Now another thing is the cost section. That's where you can define how much it costs to run this virtual machine, the price per memory, the price for the CPU, and the price for disk. So let's say, and then it's going to tell me that it is cost 1 euro, almost close to 2 euros a month, memory wise, and then the CPU wise, and then the disk wise. So if you would like uh, to generate the showback report with the usage and the pricing, you also need to define this costs to be able to charge your users for the resources they consumed. Also, you need to select what the type of the hypervisor it's meant to. In this case, that's KVM. So I'm going to pick KVM. In the advanced options, that's where it becomes interesting. So first of all, you can attach more disks to that virtual machine. It may be something with just some set of data, but it also may be the volatile, and you are going to put swap there, and something like scrap data that you don't care about the safety of the data, you can put it there. Now the networking, that's where you can define the multiple networks. And also by default, if you installed from the mini one, you are going to have the default network attached. You may reattach and place it to some other network, or you may create an alias and add a secondary IP address without adding a second network card, which in some cases might be a good thing to have. So the CPU settings, the input and output, some automatic actions to be done with your virtual machine after it's going to get deployed, and basically during the life cycle of that virtual machine. But there's one tab which is very interesting one. That is the context. So if you will look at the context tab, you're going to see the secure shell public key here, right? So you may either hardcode a specific public key in that field, or it may take the variable of the user and will take the user's public key. Basically, whoever is the owner who deployed that virtual machine is going to have the SSH public key registered. Then another cool thing, script, right? So you can also define something like APK add Apache 2, HTTPD, and so on and so forth. So you can you can run your scripts, the post deployment scripts, to configure your virtual machine. So you have same template, so one single template or one single image, and then it has some post configuration. You install some tools, configure the database or join this specific virtual machine into a cluster, mini IO cluster that's going to serve the object storage, and so on and so forth. So that's basically your imagination here. Now, if you're running Bash or shell command, then you don't need to add a shebang and set the interpreter before that. If it's in a different programming language, then you need to set it explicitly. It's very important if you have any special characters there, and a lot of sometimes with shell commands, even like installing, let's say, something like a Docker on that virtual machine, is going to have some specific special characters that either you can try to escape them, or you can just simply encode the script in base 64, and then you don't need to worry about your special characters. You can also ask your users to input some data. Might be username, password from the database, or it might be something that you are going to use in your application, or it might be a shared FQDN of that application, or some specific thing. So you can create these user inputs here, and then it's going to prompt the user to enter them. And you can make them mandatory, so the user must input something. Otherwise, it is going to it's not going to get deployed, because there will be stage user input, and it's not going to pass beyond that page. You can add your files here, but that's where also some things happens in the context custom variables, right? So that's where you enter your specific variables that can perform some post configuration built in. Now, OpenNebula images, they're running some specific context packages. So these context packages allowing you to deploy a virtual machine with a specific configurations. So there is a bunch of specific key value pairs that you can use. And I just dropped, no, I haven't dropped it in the chat. I will ask my colleagues to do so, to paste this link in the chat. So that is the URL from our documentation, where you can find all context variables that you can use, and whether they are available on Linux, whether they are available on Windows, and so on and so forth, and also what is the use case for that. So, for example, the password, right? So the password is, you can set a root password, right? It's already predefined, but I don't know what it is, so I'm going to set it to something myself. So OpenNebula. So now the password is going to be OpenNebula. Then you also can take something like time zone and configure your time zone. So in my case, I'm in, let's say, Europe, Riga. So you can set it like that, and so on and so forth. So you can already set a specific values to that pair, and avoid writing a complex start script to set all that in the first place. So that saves you time and is going to make your virtual machine a little bit more flexible, right? So let's hit the next button, and let's finish the virtual machine template editing. Now you can see it still is there, so we can deploy a virtual machine from that template. Now, your virtual machines, that is why you're using OpenNebula, right? To run virtual machines, to run some workloads. Now, as I mentioned, these are going to be instantiated from the virtual machine template, and then you can access it via the VNC, so through the Sunstone, but also you can access them using the secure shell if that is configured in your networking. Another thing is that your virtual machines can be backed up, or you can turn an image of a virtual machine into a standalone image, and then let's say build a new virtual machine template and refer to that virtual machine. So that's quite easy. But let's deploy the virtual machine first. Now, just press the play button right here, or you can go to instances, VMs, and then deploy a virtual machine from there, right? Cool. Now you presented with this view, and you can instantiate your virtual machine with a different ownership, so not for yourself but for some specific user with some specific group. Then you also can change, let's say, memory and change the CPU. That is allowed by default. Using the configuration file, you may restrict this. And let's say if that's defined 256 at the template level, it remains 256 at the during the deployment. So it's not going to allow users to change this parameter. So it's quite uh, a good thing to do. If it depends how much trust you put to your users, and depends what's your use case. If you'd like to have like 5, 6, 10 predefined virtual machine with different sizing, then it's a good thing to do to disallow users to change the resources assigned. Now then, the name and the number of instances. So the cool thing that you can deploy multiple instances at the same time. Let's say in this case, let's do 2 instances, but again, you can do more. It really depends again on your use case and on the resources you have, so you can deploy even more. But then it just takes time, obviously, to schedule all that and deploy. So, anyways, 2 virtual machines are going to get deployed. Then there will be the Alpine Linux. I can again attach disks or destroy or change disks. I may change the disk settings. So let's say it consumes 256 megs after the deployment. I can increase this partition if I would like to. So again, it also is possible. Then switch to network tab. Same as on the template, you can attach or change the networking. You can define a custom placement to deploy this virtual machine to a specific host. Let's say you may obviously point out the specific host, or you may define some rules for the process called scheduler. So it picks only it picks a host from a specific host group. Let's say you can use a custom tag, prod and dev, and say that this one's supposed to be deployed on the hosts that has the attribute prod or attribute dev. So that is again possible. Then click finish, and it is going to deploy my virtual machines. So you are going to see where it's going to place the virtual machine, on which host, the assigned IP address, its state. It's going to see the storage, so you can take a snapshot of the storage. Again, please note that it depends on the data store you're running. It also depends on the virtualization. The live snapshotting of this may not be available in some certain combinations. But if we're looking at the local and KVM, then I can take a live snapshot, right? And I can save it as an image. I can resize the partition in the post deployment phase. So all that is completely available. So, well, the virtual machine deployed. We can see that there is also the VNC here. So I can click on that and I can get straight into the console. And here you go. Using the password OpenNebula, I've logged in. Let's do the PS. So yeah, it is the simple, awesome virtual machine. And we also can see that the HTTPD is running, right? So again, it depends how you're configured. You may also be able to reach that virtual machine if your network is configured to route your traffic properly. So as you can see, we get the it works, which basically means that it's reachable. And also, it was a clean image of Alpine Linux. Nothing was installed there um, other than the OpenNebula's context variables and contextualization package, and I was able to install the Apache HTTPD on that. And additionally, let's run the let's say date, and the date is Eastern European time zone, which basically is my time zone. So that is as easy as that when it comes to deploying the virtual machines and configuring them, and basically almost 99% would be the GUI. If you need to, you can always jump into the command line and do all the same thing, but in the command line fashion. And to some extent, it might even be much faster than if you go through the web UI. So pick the tool of your choice. All right. So that was the quick glimpse, quick introduction on how you can use OpenNebula, how you can go from having nothing to actually run a virtual machine with a working application there. And then the rest is, well, totally your imagination that is limiting. Now let's have a look at the question section. We do have a couple of questions. Can I explain the data store? Yes, Ankit. What actually about the data store you would like to know? Is there something specific? Because I mean, data store is a huge world, and yeah. So, any specific question you have? So I will regarding the any storage, and also the NAS storage. You can. So I will ask my colleague to paste a link to the documentation, which again is going to provide you with all the necessary way how you need to set up the NFS. For example, NFS, you will need to mount it inside of the virtual of the host, and you will need to mount it on the front end server of the OpenNebula. So that's where your OpenNebula runs. So it must be mounted under the varlib1 data store. and then you are creating this data store in OpenNebula. So you pick the image data store, and you also can pick the you pick the system data store, and then you select the backend. In case of NAS or NFS, that would be the that would be the the shared mode. So not the local one. So you will need to pick this one. So yeah, but again, please just go through that documentation that may also touch on commands that you can use in the command line if you'd like to. Say if you don't want to leverage the GUI, you can go and use the command line interface, and that's basically copy paste. So regarding the yeah, so about the partnership, I will ask you to go through our official channels. That's not what this webinar is all about. So yeah, please contact us using our specific dedicated channels for partnership, and then my colleagues will be able to assist you on that. So regarding the scheduler, so then there is the configuration file. Again, it's quite um, quite a long topic, but so there is the configuration file that defines default scheduler policies, how to deploy the virtual machines. So, for example, if the default scheduler is basically takes packing, then that minimizes the number of hosts that will be used by the virtual machines and will reduce the virtual machine fragmentation. So basically, OpenNebula is monitoring the hosts and is aware about the specific resource consumption, and then based on that is going to perform the specific deployment. Now there's a stripping that is going to spread the virtual machines on the host. Then there's load aware, which looks at the current load and will be using the nodes with the less load. Then there is fixed, or then there is custom. So when it comes to custom, then you can define your expression that the scheduler is going to take into consideration. So, for example, you would like so it's going to deploy with the minimal number of to the host which has minimum number of virtual machines in comparison to uh, other other hosts, or you can say that you would like it to be like the more packed, or you may also take into account the memory that on that host, or you also may take into account a specific tag, because your host can be tagged. Let's say there is a host, and you can add something like this to your host, right? So and then you can write in your expression that you would like to pick the machines that are running with the tag prod. Now, in this case, though, I think you don't need to rely on the default configuration, right? Because if you'd like to run something custom, you better not to put it in the default section, because then it's basically going to be applied to every deployment. You may want to configure this at the template level. So you define the custom expression at the template level, leaving something more universal that can be applied to any deployment in the default section. So yeah, that would be the way to go. And then there is, of course, the specific process that is responsible for running the scheduler. So that is the one that's going to implement all your scheduling needs. So I hope that answered your question. Now, the next one: can an existing Windows server be used to create an image to be imported in OpenNebula? So, you mean take a snapshot of the existing Windows server and then upload it to the OpenNebula? So technically, it is possible, but you will need to add the contextualization package. So let me search for that right quick. OpenNebula. So contextualization package. Sorry, it was apps. So OpenNebula, one apps. Let me try to find it here. No, it was merged. Probably in releases. To be here, it is. All right. So you'll need to install the contextualization packages if you would like it to work, because like if you just save it as the QCOW2 image and then just upload it, yeah, it may run, but you are going to miss a lot of things like the specific variables and some other stuff. So yeah, you'll need to install the contextualization packages before uploading it to OpenNebula. So, yes, Bill. Hi. Nice to see you again. Yeah, it's pretty much correct that Bridge with security group will apply the security settings to that network, and then the simple bridge is not going to apply any. All right. Do we have any more questions? Yeah, again, about partnership, please contact our official email, because I'm not in charge to give you any direction or any guidance. So regarding containers, so there is the LXC support, or you can run the Kubernetes. So you can get the service template. Let me show you. So you can run the one key. So that is the Kubernetes deployment. It's based on the Rancher's RKE2. So it's pretty much vanilla Kubernetes after you deploy it. And it's certified as cloud native foundation installer. So it's a certified thing, and you can deploy the Kubernetes cluster and then run your containers there. And this Kubernetes cluster also has the you can run the Longhorn based storage nodes to keep your data persistent. So I would direct you towards the one key if you really would like to dive into containerization and OpenNebula. And again, if someone actually would like to look at the service, then one key is a perfect example of a service, a multi-VM deployment with multiple roles and multiple ways how you can scale it uh, based on different settings. Right. Cool. Thank you for your questions. Any other ones? You're welcome, folks. Always happy to be helpful. Remember, we have more webinars, and yeah, so jump in and look after what we're delivering next time. So we also have the technical, that kind of training webinar session in the January. So again, we'll be glad to see you there. We're going to discuss other things, and there also will be one about the operations, the same as this one, but there will be yet another with a little bit more narrowed down topic. Join our community forum. If you have any questions, then feel free to go either the enterprise route or community route. For community, there is a forum, and it's pretty much a thing that if you have any question, then someone also had this question, and this question might be already answered in our community forum. So feel free to dive into that and become a valuable member of our community. All right. So see you again soon, and hope you enjoy it. Have a nice reminder of your day,